Wow, we have a nice group today. Awesome. Kelly, is everybody in?
Yep, we're ready to go.
All right, well, great. Well, hi, I'm Karen McMullen. I'm Senior Director for Membership and Chapter Relations at CAI. And with me is my colleague, Kelly Schild, who's a Senior Manager for Chapter Development in our Midwest area, which I'm sure you all know, both of us, but I'm just going to make sure I introduce us to you. So we do have a couple of topics that came into us today to talk about. So I'll get right into it. One of the questions that we received was, how are chapters using their reserves? For instance, you know, if this chapter has reserves, but they've been so busy compiling the reserves that now they're at the point where, what do we do with them once we have them? So have any of you gone through that experience or would have suggestions for this chapter?
It was actually one of the big topics we discussed in our last meeting. As Reni's done such a good job building up our reserves, we're trying to come up with more ways to give to charity or do grant programs for neighborhoods or even educational grants for our managers. But we haven't solved it yet, but it's at the top of our list right now for sure. So I'd love to hear everyone else's ideas.
And while everyone's thinking on that piece of it, it is recommended that non-for-profits keep at least a minimum of 3 months of operating expenses in their reserves. 6 months is the ideal. But again, now that we just kind of made it through COVID, some organizations are feeling more comfortable with a year of operational expenses. So that's not covering events and things like that. That's just enough that the chapter can sustain themselves, that they can survive if there's no income coming in. So again, I just want to throw that out there while you're having those reserve discussions, making sure that the reserve is in place to make sure that the chapter can stay operational. And then outside of that, you know, what do you want to then use that money for? You know, is it technology? Or again, like Jared was saying, you know, giving back to the members in some way through scholarships or programming that way as well.
Kristen, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I was going to point out what Kelly just talked about with the making sure you had a minimum. I was going to say a minimum of 6 months and closer to a year in your reserves for operations, because as a chapter that was severely impacted and still is impacted by COVID, I would suggest making sure you have at least 9 months to a year. And then the other thing that we've kind of spent some of our reserves on, even though we've been rebuilding them, is we look at our depreciation schedule provided by our auditors and make sure that we have the office equipment and items such as furniture and computers, make sure we have enough saved for when those are going to reach end of life. So we kind of treat it like a condominium reserve study, our depreciation schedule. So, and we've also made investments into hybrid meetings. I would say that's been our biggest expense of late, is buying cameras and mics to outfit our conference room. Because our members definitely want the hybrid option, is what we've seen through survey and just registrations. But definitely nine months to a year of operating money, I would suggest. And being a chapter that sweated it pretty hard in 2020 and 2021, we can talk more offline, but there were some scary months for us, I will tell you straight up. So I would just, before you get all flush and start spending money, I would just think about it.
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. Nicole, you have your hand up.
Is there any reason why you have to spend that money right now? Because I definitely agree with Kristen, and I have some concerns about the future and business partners spending money. And I just think the more that can be socked away and backed up, the better. But I don't know if that's just me.
Nicole, I think we're in agreement from Minnesota. We recent discussion about this at our last board meeting as well. And yes, we're flush now. Contractors are doing very well in Minnesota due to hail claims. That may not always be the case. And what we've seen historically is when the hail claims go away in Minnesota, so do all the sponsorships from all these construction companies. And so we plan on keeping it in the reserves. Yes, we have some more stuff that we're wanting to plan next year, but we do want to keep a significant balance in the reserves.
Mary, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mary Hawk with West Florida. I just wanted to say, before you go looking for scholarships to your managers, we have a scholarship fund and we had to set it up a specific way because it would otherwise threaten our nonprofit status. So we had to actually endow a fund and we give small scholarships out of that. But I remember it was years ago, but I remember it being quite a process so that we did not screw up our nonprofit status by giving scholarships, because they wanted to then treat us as an education entity instead of a nonprofit.
Mhm.
So, but we had also, as far as reserves, we had, and Craig could back me up on this if I'm wrong, probably over a year in reserves when the pandemic hit, and from some really good planning from our executive director. So we pretty much sailed through the pandemic. So I would recommend having a year socked away. Who knows when the next pandemic's going to occur.
Right. Great. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. And it's a very good point about the grants, if you do those, or scholarships. Andrea, you have your hand raised.
Sorry. Actually, it was my question to start with. And, you know, we actually were able to get through COVID in those 2 years without dipping into reserves at all. Although one of the things that we did do was we let go of our office space, and we are completely virtual. So some of the things that we had on our depreciation schedule and tenant improvements for new updates to the office and that sort of thing kind of went away. We still do, similar to what Kristen said, is that we're looking at a reserve study for equipment because we are still outfitting our executive director and staff with computers and or doing reimbursements for home office type situations. And so, you know, because you know, we haven't dipped into it at all. And I feel like reserve studies are kind of, you know, like a CapEx, a one-time use versus like, I worry about scholarships because how are they going to stay funded? So I'm curious, Mary and Craig, if you guys can share information about how you guys did the endowment, and is it being invested in order to maintain that? Or is it being sponsored by business partners? Scholarships and grants were definitely something that we were looking into. And also I appreciate everybody saying about the timeframes that they want to keep in reserves, because it could totally vary based on how your chapter is set up, right? So, and I just want to clarify if everybody is, if you're talking about a year's worth of expenses, or is it expected profit in terms of operations income? I'm assuming we're talking about expenses for the year.
Andrea, at least for the Washington Metro chapter, we're talking about the annual admin budget. So that's going to be all of our salaries, all that. And we looked at it that way. And I'm actually, Ruth and I have a budget meeting this afternoon, and our budget, you know, we're looking at about $800,000 in expenses for an annual admin budget for our chapter. So I can tell you, we don't have that in reserves after COVID. But having been on the flip side where we did not sail through COVID, I would just, it's great that you let your office space go and you were able to do that. Our landlord wouldn't even meet with us. But I would be leery, because I agree with Nicole. I think we're in for a market correction. And I think starting in September, we're going to start seeing some slowdown. And I'm worried that contractors are going to have problems between the increased inflation rates and I worry about liquidity across the board personally.
Yeah, and we've also seen our investment, because everything's in a money market right now. So that investment has also dropped, right? So I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
I can answer your question about the scholarships. We had some extra, money from our golf tournaments, which are two of our biggest events. And, it was in the tens of thousands, like 15,000 or something like that. And before we started giving our golf overage away to charity, we would put it towards scholarships for our managers. And that's when we ran into the problem with the accountant who said, it's going to mess you up on your nonprofit status. So we did and put it in a fund it's a community foundation here. I don't know if they have them where you guys are, but our county is Manatee County or Sarasota County, and we use the Sarasota County or the Manatee County Community Foundation, and it's endowed, so you'll never touch that, whatever it was, 19,000 that we put in there, and they invest it for you, and you give your scholarships based on the, of course, the investment return, and they administer the whole thing. And we get the scholarship applications and have a scholarship committee that decides who's going to get them, but they sort of do the rest.
Great. Thank you. All right. Does anybody else want to share anything else on reserves, if you have used them recently, and how you prioritized and how you came to that decision on how to use them? No? Okay. Great. Great stuff. Thank you. So our other question that we had was, does your chapter have a code of conduct? And if you do, how did you create that code of conduct, and what was the process overall for it? So does anyone any of your chapters currently have a code of conduct that you'd like to share on that? Oh, everybody. Oh, Andrea, go ahead.
It was my question again. Sorry, I'm bringing all these questions to you guys. President-elect and finally jumping in, getting ready for next year. So we already have a code of conduct for our business partners, but it didn't address what we came across, which was at our golf tournament. And we had a complaint against another member or members and a guest in terms of inappropriate behavior at the event. So specifically, we're looking for event code of conduct, especially when alcohol is involved, but it can be for any reason. And in this case, it was obscene language that the people may or may not have thought they were being overheard. And we have a national sponsor that is really considering whether or not to continue with our chapter. So it's important that, these things are, we have a lot of stuff, but how often do we restate the rules of the code of conduct for your members and their guests? I'm thinking every event they have to check a box or read something, but what do you guys do?
Specifically for the golf tournament, we put our code of conduct in each golf cart because we've had the same issues. And we post it now because we had the same issues just recently at a golf tournament. We post it on the email where they sign up to play, and they have to check the box that they've read it. But we also post a shortened version in each golf cart. But we don't have it at our other events. So it'd be interesting to see if anybody else does.
So at our last golf tournament, we had some people flip over a golf cart and cause damage, and somebody's ankle got broken and got hauled off in an ambulance. We had a man sexually assault two female attendees that were at the thing, and I had to kick them out. So this is something that us as a chapter are like really focusing on, and we actually have our strategic planning on Monday. So we normally have like a disclaimer, like Mary said, when you register, that says like basically you're not going to be a jerk. And you have to sign and agree to that. And then, there's consequences and everything else. And we have like a code of conduct policy, an ethics policy, and something else. I don't remember exactly what it is. But now we're going to do something different for any event that involves alcohol. Like basically, like you're coming at your own, you leave and you need to be safe. If you're intoxicated, it's your responsibility to get home safely. We're not accepting responsibility. We're not respecting responsibility for, you know, drunken behavior or, you know, any of those kind of things going forward. If illegal activity happens, the police will be immediately notified, you know, just da 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 da.
We've also had a lot of the same issues in the past. Luckily, the member that was causing so many problems is no longer a member and no longer welcome at any of our events. So that has helped quite a bit. Things have calmed down. We did do something called Safe Ride one year, which was, I mean, it was great. It was very inexpensive to do. Although we did the same thing that you did, where we're not responsible. So we're not responsible for it. I think there was still that you do worry with people getting home safely after drinking. So we did Safe Ride. It was a great addition. I think there was 2 people that we ended up doing that with. It worked out well, very inexpensive. But as far as the code of conduct, yeah, I love the idea of actually having that on the golf carts. That's pretty smart there. So I may suggest that to our golf committee, as we have one coming up in October, and it seems to be the event that everybody seems to want to drink at, pull out. Yeah. People that don't drink all year decide that for some reason CAI golf tournaments where they have to do it.
What did you do? Was it Laura? What did you do to the people who committed these infractions? We banned a couple of people for life, really,
Yeah,
sort of.
So we're working on a couple, because there's so many different factors and whatnot going on. We're really going to be talking about it at our strategic planning on Monday of how we're going to deal with this going forward. And like, our members getting suspended and they're not allowed to events? Is it just the employee? Like all of those things. Like hindsight 2020. I mean, we were in a unique position where we had a brand new executive director. I was the highest board member there when the sexual assaults happened. So like, you always think about how you want to handle that after the fact. So I didn't call the police right away like I normally would have in the moment, just adrenaline and everything else. I just removed the people, got their contact information and bring it back to my board. But that's part of what we're going to focus on is like, so this happens, what are we doing and making sure that the committee chairs know, the executive directors know, and all the board members know. So if anybody's coming in, everybody knows what the protocol is going forward so we don't get shawshank.
Laura, I think that's great, you know, to have that kind of, how do you respond to this situation? And I think that's really important. I know a lot of people have that in place for disasters at events, but again, in these types of situations, I think it's really good to put those together. So if anyone does put those together or anyone has kind of those, please send them over to us and we can post those samples up in the toolkit. So if others are looking to do the same, you've kind of got that starting point as well.
Thanks, Kelly.
I'll
Sean?
report back next month.
Great. Sean, you have your hand up?
Yes. So I have a few pieces there, which have we reviewed the credentials of those individuals who are causing problems in any capacity for their CAI credentials? I think that that's something that should be explored. Additionally, we started carrying a separate insurance rider in Minnesota for all events. And paying for it because I think they're relatively inexpensive, and typically your event, the place that you have an event, the people who hold the liquor license have their own, but we started carrying a separate policy just in the event that there was something that happened.
Great, thank you. Andrea?
Yeah, so question for, especially going back to the golf tournament stuff, are you guys, because we're doing the same thing, we're trying to look beyond what just happened and worst case scenario, like the sexual assault is our worst case scenario. Do you guys require 2 people per booth? Do you allow people to have one person represented in a booth at a golf course where they're separated? That's one of the things that we're considering. And also, I'm curious, our executive director was given the nationals CAI, the anti-harassment policy, which includes a list of procedures and ramifications of banning from the event or a warning, banning from event and that sort of thing. And I'm curious, do we as chapters have the ability to dismiss or not cancel a membership, I guess, because the membership is a national thing, right? Not necessarily a chapter thing. So we can't necessarily get the membership canceled, but we can ban them from events sponsored by the chapter. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Yes. Kristen, did you have your hand up?
I did. Sorry, my connection's going in and out. So fortunately, I don't know that we've ever had sexual assault, but we've had copious amounts of alcohol overindulgence, let's put it that way. And I don't know if maybe we're just a little, if our chapter is just more tolerant of it, but generally we just call whoever's boss it was that was behaving badly and say, look, like, between you and I, this needs to lock up. We can't have this happen again. And knock on wood, usually it's handled that way and it hasn't really occurred again. And usually the person's so embarrassed that they don't repeat the behavior. And if anything, they're on their P's and Q's for lifetime after that. But I was just looking through, because we're going through all of our policies and procedures and manuals this year. Like that's one of the things we're doing. And I don't see anything where, so I guess we're gonna have to put that on our hit list of, let's look at it. But that's how we've always handled it. Call the company owner and be like, hey, this person was an asshole. Like, figure it out.
Hey, Kristen, our guy was the owner of the management company.
Same.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's terrible. But
it was pretty bad. I mean, it was between wrecked golf carts, stealing alcohol, you know, sexual, I mean, the whole shebang. So yeah.
The sexual assault, that's a whole nother category. But I'm like, you wreck a golf cart, you know, too much, you're stroking a check for a golf cart, obviously. You know.
I just say do not turn your head to it, because I think for years we did turn our head on certain things and it built up, and it's just not worth it. Nip it in the bud in the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
That is key, because it literally started before I was ever on the board, and yay, I'm the one that got to deal with it when I came into my presidency. So yeah, it consumed my first 3 months.
Yeah, so we wanted to record it with a letter from the board to the individuals and give them an opportunity to respond. And the two people who basically were the people having the discussion in front of the sponsor did not say or deny that they had that discussion. It was just that they thought it was private, and they were right in front of a sponsor's booth. But we feel like, you know, we have a lot of people who go from company to company incestuous. You know, you move from, you're still in the chapter, but you're in a different company. So if we call the company owner, does the next company owner know that? And so we're going to say the same thing. Do we talk to the company? Do we talk to the individual? If it's the owner of the company, how do we deal with that? So those are all things that we're addressing or trying to address right now.
Great. And Kelly, I think you posted in the chat, correct, our policy there for anybody that would like to look at it. And feel free to use bits and pieces or whatever information you can glean from it. And we can also, if you want more information, or if you want to see other samples of maybe of that the chapters are using, please let us know and we'll try to get them for you, so that maybe you don't have to recreate the wheel, but you can, you know, depending on your needs and how extensive you want to go with that code of conduct. So we can help you with that. Does anybody else want to comment on the code of conduct topic?
No, but I want to be invited to some of these golf outings.
Oh goodness.
You guys got some crazy shit going on.
I'm with you, Tony. I want to be where they're wrecking golf carts. Like I'm in. Like just to be a fly on the wall. I don't want to actually have to play golf.
Yes, unfortunately, over my tenure here, there's been many chapters that have had wrecked golf carts. Unfortunately, yes. So before Kelly and I talk about maybe some topics that we have, is there anybody else that has a question that they want to pose to the group. If you're struggling with anything, if you have a new great idea. Everybody's quiet. All right. If you don't have any topics, I'll bring some up. Kelly and I always have topics for you. Okay. One of the things that Kelly and I were talking about before this is just getting a feel from you all. How is your summer going? How is engagement with the members? Or if you're holding events, are you having success with the events? Are they attending, or are you just right now kind of gearing up for September and the fall? We'd just like to hear any type of feedback that you may want to, that you have for us and for each other. Quiet again.
Okay, I'll talk. So we've got lots of fun summer stuff. We just had a golf outing, uneventful, thank God. But we've got our summer socials coming up at the end of the month. It's a boat cruise we do on Lake Michigan. We have about almost 400 people. So it's a pretty big, we have the whole boat. It's like 4 floors, big event. Our thing that we're working on is trying to capitalize on non-members that attend our events. You know, we charge them all the extra fees. They're willing to pay them. But then, so we're doing some ambassador type programs to be able to tap into introducing them, staying tabs with them while they're at the event, following up with the event. As simple as that sounds, because we've kind of tried to do it before, but it's just sticking with it so that we can kind of capitalize on converting those non-members into members. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of an engagement thing. And we're really getting all of our committee chairs and our committees, volunteers to kind of be a part of this so that we can identify, you know, how best to make it a membership, a good membership experience. So that's one of our initiatives for that event.
Thank you. Andrea, I think you did have your hand up. Did you?
Oh, yeah, so we're just seeing a lot more people really enjoying getting back in person, even with the spread of things potentially. We've seen more and more people wanting in person. So one of the things we actually did do is dip into reserve so we could change a budgeted online experience education event to an in-person one for a leadership breakfast. Yeah, we're trying to make that happen. People are really enjoying it. Haven't had any too bad of feedback from people getting together, other than people who may have the need to stay separate, right? And we're not doing a hybrid at all on those big events. We're only doing that for committee meetings and that sort of thing.
Are any of you with your events that you're having, and we may ask this question, it seems like over and over, but are you still seeing resistance to coming to in-person? I know it could vary from chapter to chapter, but is mostly everybody coming? I see a lot of, okay. So no, okay. So in-person seems to be going okay then. Okay.
Oh no, I was shaking my head no, that they're not coming.
Well, yes, yeah. That's yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they'll come to happy hour, but they're not coming to education. So
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that in the Central Ohio chapter, we're probably at about 60%, if I had to guess, of the average attendance pre-COVID. Okay. And so the funny thing is the membership did not go down. Everybody continued to pay their fees. I think there's just people, either a combination of still having reservations about COVID stuff, or you know, it just being the same people. It's kind of one of those things that like it's a domino effect. If somebody shows up and there's less people, then they might be less likely to come to the next one because there's like, well, there's not as many people there for me to network with and things like that. And then it snowballs a little bit. And so I think we're trying to come up with a happy hour and some things like that to try to like reinvigorate the membership a little bit before we get back into more of the businessy type stuff that we do at luncheons and things like that. But it's been tough.
Well, Jim, maybe you should talk with Kristen, because Washington Metro does their happy hours very well. So maybe the two of you could connect if you want some ideas or thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, you got it.
Craig?
Yeah, hello, everybody. One of the things that I think we were seeing is that we were hearing from a lot of our business partners that when people were remote, they didn't really feel like they were getting the value for their membership. So, when we were doing online events, when we were doing other things, they were complaining that I can't get in front of people. I'm not getting my value. I'm not getting the, what I needed from my sponsorship. So one of the things that I think we've done a pretty good job of is finding opportunities for those people to be able to be in front of the membership, whether it's, if it's on a Zoom and getting their 2 or 3 minutes to introduce themselves, or it's other types of sponsorship opportunities. I think that, everybody has a different idea of what they value and what's important to them. So I think we've done a pretty good job of reallocating some of those things to make sure that the people who didn't feel like they were getting value were feeling like they were getting value and felt like they wanted to renew their, not only their membership, but their sponsorship at the end of the year. 2 years ago, we did a retention kind of incentive. So everybody who renewed their sponsorship at the same or higher level, we gave them a 10% discount. And we kind of did the math and figured out how much we were going to potentially spend by doing that. And we ended up having more sponsorships than we had previously. And we actually covered what we thought was going to be the contribution that the chapter was going to have to make, because people appreciated the fact that we understood that, we have challenges and they were having challenges, and just a 10% discount, which in the grand scheme of things was not a huge amount of money, really made a big difference for them. So that's something I think we did that really helped the membership kind of feel like they were getting value as well. And then lastly, we have our chapter breakfast every month, which is probably the primary networking and chapter educational event, because we do a CEU with for the managers at the breakfast. And we changed the format of that a little bit and made it a little more, we found it was getting kind of lengthy, and we kind of made it a little more compact, and we actually, the board made the decision to expend some of our resources, some of our reserves to cover the lunches for the managers, which previously were nominal. But because the board, the business partners weren't happy that the managers weren't coming, the managers weren't happy that they had to pay, we, for a minimal amount of difference, we ended up really, I think, doing a good job increasing the participation just by deciding to cover that cost for them. And it really made the managers happy, and it made the business partners happy as well. So those are just some of the things we've done.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Anything else anybody wants to share?
Hi, Angie Adams here from California.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, President-elect. So I'm working now, for next year programs and our budget and all those other fun things. And one of the things that so many people have come to me and said, the monthly luncheons, and we kind of just got back, and I think people were excited at the beginning, but we're still not pulling in like what we were obviously pre-COVID. But people are finding the monthly luncheons a little just the same, and all those other things, And so I had a discussion with our ED and with our programs committee, and talking about not scaling down, but making it bigger and better and higher quality. And I know that there's a couple people who are like, well, I like monthly, it's the time when I get to network, but I'm like, but we have so many events anyway that you're still going to be touching out and seeing us at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. But I didn't know if any of you have experienced that, because I want it to try and talk about it in a positive way, and not like, hey, we're taking things away, but what we're trying to do is make it better and make it higher quality. Because again, we're talking about, I'm not sure how much marketing money everyone's going to have next year for sponsorship. So trying to come up with fresh ideas, trying to rejuvenate people again. I just, I see change is difficult for a lot of people, right? So it's all about how we try and sell it. But just wondering if, you guys have experienced that, there's a way that you could recommend an approach.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was gonna say, we did. We had that same issue. And then we had to, it got to a point where people just weren't coming to the luncheon because they felt like, well, I'm gonna see these guys next week at another event, because we did have so many events. So we scaled back a little bit on the events and put the money towards better events, luncheons being one of them. Our August luncheon is at the Georgia Aquarium, and it's just the amount of people. I can't tell you the difference in the amount of people that come. I mean, when I tell you, when you go from 50 to 250 people attending, because we have just, our program committee just focused. We worked budgets differently so that we could make sure that this was well attended by managers. I mean, all the vendors, they're going to come anyway because they want to see the managers, but the managers aren't going to come unless it's all about the location of having it. So it's made a huge impact for us. And we also started having the lunch sponsorship, to where now we roll it out to our what we call our platinum sponsors. And once that happened, that allowed us a little bit more money to be able to increase, you know, where we have it, just to increase the quality of the event. And then it gives them, you know, the sponsor gets 10 minutes beforehand and starts speaking while the entire crowd is there, able to, you know, leave trinkets on the table, whatever. So yeah, it's a big difference, but we scaled back on the number of events, put it towards the luncheon. And now because of that, and we're not having so many events, we still have a ton, but they're just better attended.
Okay.
I don't know if that's really answering.
No, but I mean, it's helpful. I just think also, I don't know if you guys are experiencing that, and then I know Andrew has that comment too, is that a lot of our business partners, especially like our attorneys and others, are having like their own educational stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so that is also now becoming, it was before, but since COVID, it's so much more. And so I think sometimes managers also are inundated, and also your execs of your management companies are like, well, listen, if they're going to give them the same information for free, why am I going to pay for my manager? You know what I mean? Like, I think somehow we are disconnected in a lot of ways, and I'm got to try and focus back on how do we still, you can still have your things, but CAI needs to be able, we need to as the chapter be able to give them something that they're maybe not getting elsewhere.
And I will say we have to coordinate with our other vendors, our ones that do a lot. We coordinate our calendars with theirs. And that has been a huge help, because it did interfere with some of the educational things that we were doing. We'd find out somebody was having some kind of, you know, boat cruise that day, or cornhole tournament or whatever, and people were going to that instead.
Right.
So it made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that.
Great. Well, I see a lot of hand raised, so I'm just going to go as I'm looking from my screen left to right. Kristen.
So I kind of alluded to it earlier, but with our education events, like the managers are not coming. It's just because, agreed, there's a lot of freebies out there. There's a lot of hesitancy to leave their desks, I think, and that there's just so much work going on that they can't leave. So we've started investing in hybrid education, and we've launched an on-demand library that you can go and basically anything that's been recorded, you can go get your continuing ed credits through the on-demand library. And I don't really have any results on that yet because it's only been up for about a month. But when we were having in-person only events, there was one event in particular towards the end of the spring that we planned for an education luncheon just to be in person, and we had 4 people registered. So we went ahead, and it just, so you guys understand, we have like 3,200 members. Like, so 4 people registered is like, what, like, are we going to cancel this? What are we going to do? So with 3 days left, we switched to hybrid, and we ended up with 40 people registered for the education session. So we've just moved to a place where I think that going forward, all of our education is going to be hybrid or online, at least for now. And our business partners are not happy about it, but we're doing things like they get to introduce or moderate or breakout rooms. Like we're trying to work with them to figure it out. But nobody's happy if only 4 people show up. So, so we're having that problem because a lot of the business partners are doing freebies as well. But the happy hours, anything outside seems to be getting a good buzz. Inside, it's hit or miss. But if you guys are looking for anything, I'd say go outside. If I could have 4 golf tournaments a year, even with crash carts, I probably would. But that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kristen. Nicole?
So I think that this is opens up a huge topic that we might, I don't know if everybody wants to do a separate call down the road or something, but I think we need a major think tank on this. I think this is a much bigger problem than we see a lot of heads shaking in agreement, but it's a really big threat. I know I've always been part of companies that are top level sponsors, and I'm not necessarily considering that for any of my future chapters because I'm evaluating where the dollar goes and my ROI. And even though ROI is kind of fake in this industry, it still kind of exists. And I think many are. And so you take away 4 or 5 top level sponsors, you're hitting your budget by a $50,000 deficit to start the year. So I think we really, as a whole and not just as individual chapters, need to tackle the topic of how do we get those education sessions to have meat on the bones and be big time education sessions and not just a fluffy event here and there. Topics need to be heavier topics. Levels of education need to be established. There's no high-rise designation. There should be a high-rise designation out there. There are some major, and I'm sure it's being worked on a national level. So, but I think this group of presidents and vice presidents working together could potentially head some of these things off at the pass, because I really think some chapters are going to be affected worse than others. I'm not saying tomorrow, but I think in the next 2 years, it's going to be a very different conversation for that next level of president-elect that's going to be coming in.
Nicole, we have a task force right now, and I'm actually sitting here in the draft for the survey. We're doing an independent third-party survey of all of our business partners that is going out based on a lot of these things: partnership dollars, sponsorships, how you want this. And then from that survey, we're planning on having 7 to 10 smaller focus groups to dive into some of this, because it is such a large concern in our chapter. So I'd be happy to talk about it more offline or whatever, but like, we're definitely feeling the effects right now. And so I agree that I do think this is going to be a nationwide, if it's not already, it's going to be a nationwide issue, because we're seeing it now.
To your point, you're doing all of your education online. Why can't we invite each other's chapters to events that we're doing online? Like, why? No, I know. I'm just saying in general, like on a national, like, why can't that be coordinated to feed off of each other and to help each other out, and to make, if we're all reinventing the same wheel for our chapters, we do have differences, but we also have a ton of similarities. And I mentioned this at national, that if we're not, there's no reason why we should be reinventing the wheel on every single topic. Those similarities we could knock out of the park if we combined forces instead of breaking them up and everybody doing the same thing, especially with not super strong speakers. We're not all trained to be speakers. We're trained to be our experts in our fields. So if we have strong speakers, why are we not utilizing them across the nation? I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox, but that's just, anybody that wants to talk, let me know.
Andrea?
Yeah, so I do want to jump in on that, because we actually saw an increase in our monthly education events when we went virtual only. We used to do it every month as a luncheon, and we are seeing probably 30 to 40% increase in signups by our managers. Without the cost of the luncheon and the food and the space, the sponsorship dollars are actually a little bit less, because they can be, right? So we are still putting together the programs with in chapter experts and that sort of thing, but we have gotten fantastic feedback and are continuing. We were going from, I think, 30 to 35 people on a monthly basis up to 70 at some events based on the topic. We are also doing levels of topics. So they hit a topic and then they do 100, 200, then 300 levels. So they go more in depth as the, so instead of more topics, you're doing a deeper dive right into that same topic, and we're getting great feedback from our managers on that as well. So you don't have to come up with new topics every single time, and that's through our education department. So, or chapter committee, sorry. But yeah, so I would encourage, and the other thing is our chapter is all of Washington State. We've got people, you know, we're trying to do some expansion, and we can get more people from outside of the greater Seattle area because we're doing it virtually as well. So we haven't seen a negative effect by going completely virtual for those monthly meetings. And then we do have our bigger chapter luncheons that are the entire chapter, and we have in-person networking and everything else. So those are quarterly, or they used to be quarterly. Now we've only done 2 since COVID allowed us to come back in person. And I have to jump off because I've got a dog that needs to go out. So have a good day.
Thank you, Andrea.
And that made me think of something too with Andrea. If you have any really great speakers, we do have that speakers bureau as a part of the toolkit. So please recommend, and if you're looking for speakers, everyone that's listed in there has come directly from chapters who have said, this person was successful with us. Recently, we've been asking, you know, is it virtual, in person, things like that. But definitely take a look on there. And if you have anybody, please go ahead and put it on there. That's a quick, easy way to recommend and get people to be able to see a really good speaker or presenter.
Thanks, Kelly. Mary?
Yeah, I just, we do a lot of virtual education too, and we too get more signups virtually, of course, because someone can just sign up and sit at their desk. But I'm wondering how you satisfy your sponsors. It really, to me, is very detrimental to our sponsors. There's no mini trade show. There's no, you know, handshaking, elbow bumping, whatever. There's no communication with managers from our sponsors, and they're getting very frustrated because of the lack of networking.
Kristen?
So here's one thing that I've been trying to talk to our business partners about, and this is a little specific, but I agree with you that there is a loss of networking because you're not going to get to talk to a whole bunch of managers in a room. However, if you are the speaker for that class and presenting as a knowledgeable, as an industry expert, and let's say, I'm going to use myself as an example. I've got a client right now that we're getting ready to do a huge pipe replacement project in the whole high-rise building. So let's say I have an education session that speaks to, from one of the engineers that speaks to either managing a high-rise project or whatever. I'm going to say to my board, hey, board members, you should go watch this webinar, or let's have a meeting and let's watch this webinar. And here's this industry expert who, by the way, I've also gotten a quote to provide engineering services for you to oversee this project. So what's going to happen then? That person that gave that webinar is automatically going to have veracity in the minds of the homeowners who are actually doing the hiring. So I'm not saying that it's a perfect world, but I do think that there is still, framed the right way, I still think that there's benefit to better quality leads that come out of virtual education than if you were just to meet at an education and handing out business cards. Like, does that make sense? I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but
yeah, obviously, and I teach, as a business partner, teach a lot of classes for that very reason. But when you've got close to 300 business partners or that you need to satisfy, they can't all teach a class. There's not enough hours of the day. So we used to have them sponsor, you know, 5 of them would sponsor an education outing, maybe not be speaking, but they'd be sponsoring and they'd have a table and all that. That's what they miss. And we've had to cancel. We've scheduled those events and had to cancel them because of competition out there, which whoever said that their business partners sit down with them and coordinate calendars, I want to be you. Our business partners are mean. They don't coordinate the dates. They find out when we're going to do it, and then they put theirs on the week before. And then we have to cancel ours. So I'm just venting now, so I'll shut up.
No, we coordinate. It's helped a lot. And there's really just, I guess there's a handful. We send out our calendar of events and ahead of time, and they've all been pretty good about saying, you know, looking at that and trying to schedule. But we've had to bring it to their attention too, saying, hey, we have an event that day. We want your event to be successful. We want ours to be successful. So if we can work together. Mm-hmm. And it has helped. Now, I'm not saying it's all of them are like that.
I would try.
You know.
I would try that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. All right. Anything else anybody wants to? What do we have left, Kelly? We have 8 minutes left. So is there anything else that y'all wanted to chat about? Some good stuff. I've learned some stuff today. Oh, Nicole, go ahead.
Super quick question. And not controversial at all, like my last comment.
Fine.
Lack. Well, maybe it is. Whose chapter contributes or helps, does the fundraising for LAC, and who expects their LAC to do their own fundraising?
We have 3 LACs and we fundraise for all of them.
They don't do their own fundraising. The chapter does.
We do both. We do both.
Okay.
Both.
Both.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
We have one and we do both.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And speaking on that topic, that's one of the things that I was going to mention to you all is that the LAC nomination, the chapter LAC nomination process has started, and you'll get some information in our weekly email to you, and also Government and Public Affairs, Lula Ficato is coordinating that. I believe she sent some information to you. Those are due September 16th. If you have any questions or you're unfamiliar with the process, please do outreach to Lula. She's great. She will help you in any way that she can. In particular, there's the issue of term limitations. So she can assist you in ascertaining whether or not some folks have served their 10 years and now they must take a little bit of a break. So I just wanted to remind you all of that. Kelly, did we have any other admin things we wanted to mention?
I think the only other thing is that I know a lot of people are starting to think about budgeting and 2023 yes. and your calendar of events. So last week, Karen had sent out an email with a couple of just reminders of some things that we cover the cost of, for example, Zoom and your chapter staff, giving them access to membership within an association. So again, we kind of went through and put some things in there, including some dates. But if you need anything else from us regarding budgeting, please let us know. But again, we just wanted to make sure you had some of those basic information when you guys are moving into that part of the year of time to do budgets.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Also, I wanted to remind you all of the our chapter executive director CED retreat is October 24th and 25th. We do have 2 scholarships available to attend. It's 2 $500 scholarships. So if your chapter executive director is going to attend, I really encourage you to have them apply for the scholarship. It's $500, and for the retreat for your executive director, we pretty much cover all meals for them. They may have one that they have to do, so it would be travel transportation to get here in the hotel. So the $500 would help. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And the deadline for that, I believe, Kelly, is that the 16th as well? August 16th, not September though, August 16th. So if you want to just get those into me, that would be great. All right, we've got 4 minutes. That was good stuff. Woohoo. Woohoo. All right. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to bring up?
I have one final
Oh,
piece
go ahead, Kelly.
that I'm not sure everyone knows about. With your chapter staff and mainly your executive directors, we just did a large survey. We get a lot of questions of what are other chapters doing and how are they doing this, or how many events are they holding a year? So we had an 88% response rate from our chapters. So we're compiling that information. The events piece will be the first piece that will be released. And that will be broken down into region, chapter size, and overall, so that you guys can see that data. So we will be giving that out and kind of getting the whole, it was 150 questions. So your CED spent about an hour, or your staff about an hour to 2 hours filling this out for us. But I think it's going to be really good information for you guys, and for you guys to bring back to your boards and your committees, and helping just with the process of things. So I just wanted to let you know that that's coming down the pipeline as well.
Good stuff. We're excited about that. It's a huge project that Kelly undertook. And so I'm a data wonk, so I'm looking forward to it as well. All right. Thanks, Kelly. All right. Well, with that, if nobody has anything else, I'll let y'all go get back to your day. And thank you for joining us today. Good information. Thank you.